Then one day, after it keeping us safe for so long, the armor got heavy. That thing that had kept us feeling so safe was no longer anything but a burden, and yet we kept trudging on. What did you do the day the armor got heavy? And what can you do now to move forward without quite so much struggle? Let's talk about that today. Hi, my name's Steve Kidd. I am a third-generation minister, international best-selling author of 39 books and counting. I've had the wonderful privilege of working with over 5,000 people, helping them write, publish, market their books to bestseller, and everything that goes beyond that. We've been a marketing company for 40 years, and I discover this a little bit more all the time, we're here to help you get clear, to architect your visibility. I was talking with a friend of mine this morning and, really beginning to look at that whole concept of the word and the phrase an architect. An architect creates a blueprint. An architect designs things. They show you things from their imagination that can be real in your life. Architects don't build the house. Architects can't come in and transform you. Only we can do the transformation on the inside of each of us. There is no builder, there is no coach, there is no system, there is no program that's out there that is going to change you. Only you can make the changes in your life that you're meant to make. Nobody else can do it for you. And this may seem a little harsh, but really, honestly, nobody else wants to do it for you. And here's the worst part about it. There are coaching programs out there, and I'm sure you've probably been a part of some of them too, where they'll blame you for the parts of things that they couldn't fix because they think they can fix it, when in truth, what they really needed to understand was that's a fun word to say. I'm going to keep that one. It was always yours to do. There is your side of the net. I've given this explanation before, but I'll give it to you real quickly again. Okay. In psychiatry and in counseling, there is feeling the rain on your skin. That's cool. There is a psychological concept about a net, about actually an entire tennis court. Okay, and you've got the court that's laid out, and then there's a net in between them. There's your side of the court, there's the other side of the court. There's actually also a fence around the court. That are the things that keep the conversation, the game, the communication with people in. Okay, and that's what the fences are. In the case of especially teenagers, our parents are, good parents. Not everybody was blessed to have that, but good parents are that fence around that keep the teenager within side of the things, because especially in adolescence, which is really what the real phrase of that should be, with all the development and stuff, they need parameters of, no, you don't go this far. Okay, and there could be all kinds of discussions about that, but that's the whole concept. So in a conversation is about volleying. Okay. Whereas in a tennis match, it's about trying to get the ball past and have it stay on the other person's side. In a conversation, you want to try to get the ball back to the person so they can then get the ball back to you. And that's how conversation works. Okay. And the net is there to determine what are the things that are your part and what are the things that are their part. And what a lot of us end up tending to do is jump the net and go over and hit the ball for them too, or help them learn how to hit the ball, rather than understanding whatever's on their side of the net, that's their stuff. And we need to leave that to them. And whatever's on your side of the net, that's your stuff. And a lot of times these coaching programs, and I've been guilty of this too, so this isn't me being judgy, they tend to want the coach to run around. They think of, and I get this thought concept theoretically, of the coach as the fence. And you can, and what a coach really should be is the fence that determines the parameters of the conversations that you need to have with the person you need to have the conversation with. Do you understand? Do you begin to see some of the coaches that you've worked with and some of the places where they're all over the court and trying to be the fence too? You see, that side of the net, that's yours. And all too often, we end up in a place where we're on the other side of the net, people are on our side of the net, and there aren't those parameters in it. And we walk around and we spend our time trying to do things that aren't ours to do, or expecting that a coach is going to do things that aren't theirs to do. And we end up with a total breakdown. Let's put this up so it maybe doesn't buzz quite as much. All right. So, and the reason why I bring that up is because our armor became very much like that coach. The armor was supposed to be the fence. It was supposed to be the thing that kept us safe. Because the other thing the fence does, as well as define the boundaries of what the game can be, it keeps us safe from the outside world. And that's why we put the armor on originally. There was something that happened. We suited up against it so that we didn't experience that pain, hurt, loss, whatever. Unfortunately, what happens is as we grow, and again, coaches, some of this is going to apply to you as well as to the individual on their side of the thing. And I hope that you hear from it. Because as a coach, we should be creating an ever expanding tennis court. Their side of the net stays their side of the net, but the area that they can play in should be getting bigger in a safe way. You see, the problem with armor is that it doesn't expand. This is why you don't ever see really any real pictures of like really super fat, knights in armor. Not saying there weren't some of them, not saying there aren't some things that can be done. And I'm not saying that I haven't seen some of them that are, what did we used to call them? Big boned, chunky, husky, those kind of things. But armor isn't really made that way. I mean, now it can be customized to your body shape and those kind of things, and armorers could talk to you about all of that. But they're not designed for you to gain weight, for you to expand. And in this particular case, I'm not talking like we did yesterday about, my weight loss journey and those kind of things. I'm talking about natural expansion, about the fact that, when you were 2, you were a certain size, and now you're the age that you are, and you're bigger. I mean, I think probably everybody I can say you're bigger than you were when you were 2. You're absolutely bigger than you were when you were born. Okay? With all of the different things that come to play that can, cause people to stop growing early or those kind of things. We're all bigger now than we were in the womb. And we did have some time that we were growing. Wherever that growth stopped at, whatever height you stopped at, from a natural standpoint, imagine if a little baby came out of the womb and we slapped them into, an iron thingy, and called it, so that we could keep the baby totally safe. Like one of the big rages these days in cell phones is this cell phone is the one that has titanium. And yeah, I mean, even as I'm looking at, because you've heard all the, misery stories about the struggles I'm having with my phone. And eventually I'm going to have to replace it. And yeah, in a perfect world, I'd like to replace it with one that is, if it really truly is, and I'm going to do some research on this, that, is titanium versus being made out of a plastic or a more bendable metal, because conceptually speaking, at least, and again, I haven't done the research on this yet, that should make it a safer phone. Should make it more shock resistant and able to handle the wears and tears, because I'll probably have that phone for another 5 or 6 years, like I've had this phone for 5 or 6 years now. And I want it to last and live. But if we slapped that little baby in titanium, very quickly they would be malformed. I've read stories about how in certain countries, the women would bind their feet so that their feet would intentionally stay small. I don't know how well that actually works, because I don't really know whether that really actually keeps the feet from growing or whether it just breaks bones at certain points. But that would be the concept on it. And that's what the armor ended up doing to us. Not literally physically, because very few of you watching are actually sitting there in plate mail with the visor down going, okay, I'm ready for Steve's next live. Okay, if you happen to be at a Ren fair and you happen to be doing that, okay, that's great. It does work and it also breaks bones. Thanks for knowing that, Patricia. I knew you would. You know, yes, if you happen to be watching me live at a Ren fair, thank you. That's awesome. That's amazing. But in reality, in truth, when the real comes to play, right? We're talking about that emotional armor. And the longer we wear it, the less it fits. Because here's the thing. You are continuing to grow in life. Not necessarily up, maybe out. You may even be growing down. And there are times for every one of those. I know some of them feel like they're unhealthy, but they really aren't. A tree needs deep roots. There are certain types of trees that in order for them to be truly healthy, their main root stem needs to be as deep as the tree is tall. There are other trees that have more shallow roots. They're easier to knock over. And the deeper the root system, typically the harsher of winds they can deal with. And they develop that way. So growing down isn't necessarily a problem, but you're still growing. If you're, nurturing and developing yourself and you're not just digging down into the dirt. See, there's the parts of you that are supposed to be your root system, and there's parts of you that are supposed to be above and shown to the sunlight. And when we put the parts of us that are the tree and try to make them roots, it doesn't work. That's why they always tell you when you're building things construction-wise and you put boards or posts into the ground, that you put the posts into cement, or you put a spur into the cement and the post on top of it, one way or the other, so that the root system of the wood is protected from the ground, because that stuff that isn't roots is meant to be out in the air. It's not meant to be down in the wet ground. And the armor does that to us. It limits us, breaks our feet while we're still continuing to grow. And eventually what ends up happening, and I could have also used for the title, when the armor's too tight. But my thought was really more that it becomes too heavy. Because I can tell you from experience, and I will in this particular case talk about my weight journey. What I know from experience is that as you're gaining the weight, typically speaking, you don't, for the most part, notice it. There are some things, but there's a lot of it you don't. You are those few extra pounds heavier, and it just is. And you don't really walk a whole lot different. There are transition points where you do begin to walk a little different, and things like that. And we could talk in more detail about that some other time when it was on topic. But you get to that certain point, and then eventually the effects of carrying that weight begins to press down on the rest of you. It compresses your spine. It causes damage to your hips, because the center of your body is supposed to be there. You can get to the place where it can really have major problems on your back, because it tends to want to make you front heavy. you know, depending on where and how you're carrying the weight. Pregnant women will tell you that. They'll talk about how, when you get into the 8th and 9th month of pregnancy, whether you gained a little bit or a whole lot of weight, your equilibrium is a little off and sitting becomes a little bit more difficult. The gaining the weight, for the most part, and I know there's some difficulties to it. Women, please don't jump on my case for understating, but it's really not the gaining the weight for the most part that was difficult. It's all the other things that come along with it. And it's the movement and how much more difficult it becomes to sit and then stand back up. And those things creep up on you. One day, you're this thin, sexy creature. That's how come you got pregnant. Hate to break it to you in case you didn't know. All right. And then that miracle happens. And the weight begins to develop as the baby begins to develop. And your body, adjusts for that, as well as, puts on the extra weight to also be able to nourish the baby in a healthy, perfect situation. I know there are times when it doesn't turn out that way, okay? And it's the effect of those kind of things that really begin to show up for you. You remember that day when you were pregnant and you were wondering how it was possible that you threw up as much as you did, especially in that first trimester, and were still gaining weight? Do you remember that stage in your pregnancy where it felt like you were going to the bathroom all the time and you wondered how you could continue to be still gaining weight when you were going to the bathroom that often? Yes, I have been involved in watching, my wife. They're the 4 middle children are all my fault, and I was there through the whole entire time of it. So I'm, from an outside observer, very aware of those kind of things. And supportive enough that I wanted to know what was going on. The armor gets to the place where it does that same thing to us. At some point, the weight of it became heavy. And that's why last week, more than anything, I was inviting you to begin to remove it. You've got your shield so that when people sling stupid darts and arrows and stuff that's just ridiculous, you can just block it. You can brush it off. When they come in with their sword to hit you, you can catch it. You have your sword, which should be truth. It should be bringing into the light the things that are real, speaking your truth, saying the things that you know have happened. Not in a judgy, preachy, condemning kind of way, but just because it's your sword. It's your truth. Does that make sense? But the rest of the armor becomes limiting. There's only so much you can move your arm. We talked about last week about, the breastplate keeping you away from being able to get hugged and from allowing your heart to come out. Not literally out of your chest, but, your heart light to shine, if you will. Right? One day that armor just got heavy. And if it hasn't for you yet, it will. The armor, just like a full body cast, has its time and its place. And I'm not telling you to remove yours, but I am telling you that at some point you'll have to. Because whether you want to or not, you are going to continue to grow. From an emotional, spiritual, real you standpoint, you can be the same weight, the same height, the same body shape, and you can hold that for years and years and years and years and years and years and years. During that entire time, you will still be growing. Now, you may not be growing healthily. You may be developing all the things that you really shouldn't be developing in your life. What you focus on is what grows. Are you stressed and worried? If you spend your time stressing and worrying, guess what you're going to get? The things you stress and worry about. We talked about that a little bit, haven't we? How your mind is an amazing computer that wants to come up with the answers for things. And so because of that, when we stress and worry about things, our mind's trying to figure out a way to figure that, to make that happen for you. This is what you're thinking about all the time. So you must really want it. Because just like a computer, your mind just takes the data you put into it and gives you the output that's based on the data you're giving it. If you want different output, you got to give it different data. That's what I'm always telling people about AI. I love AI. Absolutely, totally, absolutely love it. But the key to good output from your AI is good input. It's your data set. It's the prompt. Now, yes, I've told you about the different times that I've done prompts that have been completely horrendous. And had I not done all the other things that I'd done, we'd be off on a really way out there wacky tangent probably right now. Instead of me being here to help you be clear, to be visible and valuable, who knows where we'd be. Because the data that underlined me even asking it a stupid question was a solid data set. If you type into your calculator, and calculators don't work this way, but if you typed into your calculator, make 2 plus 2 not equal 4. Again, like I said. Now, if you use other programs with a different data set than what a calculator has, a calculator is based in the concept that when you hit a 2 button, and then a plus button, and then a 2 button, and then an equal button, it's going to give you the number 4. And if you do it backwards, and you hit a 4 button, and a divide button, and a 2 button, and an equal button, you're going to get a 2. That's the data set it works on. Now, if you went with a different system and you asked the right types of computers, you could get an answer for. You could go to ChatGPT right now, or others that are a little better with math. Whenever you're using math in ChatGPT, make sure you check it. It messes up more than it gets it right, even with new 5. Trust me. Just this weekend, I saw it again. I'm like, this plus this does not equal that. This minus that would equal that. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. Okay. It's never going to be a time when you're not going to need to know math. How do you know if your calculator is using the right data set if you don't know that 2 plus 2 equals 4? And yes, I went straight to addition and division rather than using actually subtraction. I should have used in that example. So yeah, you can put in the wrong data and you can get the wrong output. You can create a whole computing device that makes the number 2 unreal. This would be more of a psychological construct. 2 is something you imagined and does not really actually exist. Therefore, if you take 2 of something and add it to 2 of something else, you would have something unknowable, because both of those 2s are unknown, undefined data. See what I'm saying? And that's what happens with our growing the wrong way. We're not putting in the right data. Sorry, I got really deep there on you. Big geek. Sometimes some of the computer stuff just pops out of me. I apologize. But you're going to continue growing. Whatever you focus on is going to grow. Whether you're growing the worry or you're growing your business. If you are like the little engine that could, and you're chugging up the mountain saying, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, you're going to be feeding the ability for you to be able to do it. If, on the other hand, you're like, no, there's no way I could possibly do this, your mind's going to find a way for you to not possibly ever do it. That shows up on my walks every morning. There are times when I'm just so exhausted, and I know all of you know how this feels. You're like, oh my gosh, I don't think I'm going to be able to make it around the block. A block is a little different construct when you live out where I live, but I still call it the block. Okay? And if I get enough up in that mindset, I'll turn around and come home and not do a whole entire block. Or it can be like, say, for example, this morning, it rained all night long, and there's a path on one of the roads that I walk on around that block that becomes a river going across. And it'll be that way until, if it stopped raining 2 hours ago, it'll be that way until probably 6 or 7 o'clock this evening, because it just pours off of the one field and across the road and into the other field. And that's a low spot. And so I know when I get to that, I got to turn around and got to go the other way. At least on mornings like this morning when I'm wearing Crocs. So, if I'd been wearing boots, I could have splashed through the mud or through the river, the water. But in Crocs, in case you don't know, they've got holes in the shoes. And I did it once, and you slosh through them, and then you have very wet socks. Trust me. Now, if I had just stopped there and been like, knew I wasn't going to make it around the block this week, then what's the solution? My mom, who most of the time goes walking with me, she weighs every last bit of 125 pounds. I don't think even in a wagon she could drag me the rest of the way. And that's if it was all flat and level, which it isn't. But if your mindset is, no, I got this. You get to that river, you turn around, you just go walk the block. In this case, it was basically 3/4 of the whole block. So I got more walking in. And again, it's your mindset. Is it, hey, yay, I got more walking in? Or is it, oh my gosh, I'm not going to make it now because I came this far. And now I got to turn around and go the other way, and I don't think I'll live through it. Absolutely. Hey, Shelly, glad to have you in here with us. You can join me on my walk. You can join us in Visibility Amplifier community, or you can just be here on the live with us, joining us. We're glad to have you here with us. Because you see, and what we've been talking about is that at some point, the things that we used, the armor to protect ourselves, the emotional armor, it just gets heavy. It limits our ability to grow in healthy ways. We continue to grow, we just become malformed. And so we spent last week taking the armor off so that we can grow healthy. We can grow in the directions that we need to grow in and do the things that only you can do to make the difference that only you can make. We're so glad to have you here too, Shelly. Thanks for joining us. You see, when we take that bold step, I'm not saying get rid of the shield, but we turn down the noise. I don't hear any noise. Okay, that one lost me. When we decide to take the armor off and show up in the world, we do need to surround ourselves with people that are going to watch our back and help us stay safe. We do need times when we can take a break, because there are going to be things that are coming at us. We're going to still need our shield to protect us from the things that are unhealthy for us. We are going to need our sword to shed light into reality and truth. But we want to grow. We want to keep developing. We want to make We want to make the difference in this world that only we can make. All of last week, Shelley, we were talking about the emotional armor that we put on at some point. Yes, the inner noise, the inner voice. Yeah, absolutely. Last week, we were talking about the armor that we put on to protect us that now has become a hindrance to us. And we spent last week really taking that armor off. And so now this week, we're talking about how to live in a safe space versus putting ourselves back in situations where that armor needs to come back on us, where we can show up and be all that we are in the world. And yeah, sometimes that inner voice is the thing we had to arm ourselves against. That's where clarity really, really comes in. Because when we know how amazingly, incredibly cool we are, then we can really, truly show mentally, even if necessary, that inner critic, the truth of who we are. I'm clear on who I am. Therefore, I'm connected to the people because my heart cares for the people that I know I need to meet. And I consistently go out and do them. We put that armor on because absolutely that healing takes time. Just like a full body cast is very useful when you're broken physically on that level. But you're not going to live the rest of your life in that full body cast. You do need to heal. And if the armor is on, if the cast is on, if the healing balms are on, and you still need them because you haven't healed, that's a totally different place to be in. And at that point, the armor won't be heavy. The armor will be about protection. It'll be something you need. And as we went through the journey last week, we talked about how when you get to the place where you no longer need it, and then you take it off, and then you move to a place where you can still show up in the world. You showed up the whole time, but when you can continue to grow and you don't need the armor anymore, and you can be healthy and whole, you can do so many things and you can begin to grow again without the restrictions of that armor. Because at some point, that weight, those pressing things, they keep us back from making the impact that we could make. Yes, most people don't know they have it on. It came from the traumas that we had. It came from the situations that we went through. And for all the stuff about armor, Shelley, feel free to watch all of last week. We went through that whole transition last week from going from fully armored to growing to the place where we can give ourselves permission to remove some pieces of it for healthy reasons. And then in that safe space, we can look back at when that armor stopped being a protectant and was just a weight that we had on us. And we can give ourselves permission, and we can tell our minds, I'm not wearing that armor anymore because I don't need it. I've learned the skills to be able to say no when it's time to say no, to not be in relationships with people that are unhealthy with me, to know how to use my shield to protect me in a way that when people do fling stuff at me, I protect myself from them. I know the ways that when I do take damage, because we still do, that I can heal myself healthfully without having to have to retreat again and hide. And we do those kind of things because at some point that armor got too heavy and we let it go because we wanted to continue growing, to make the impact in the world, to be the difference that only we can make in this world. You absolutely are powerfully, positively, amazingly cool. And you've got an impact that only you can make in this world. And whether you're in full battle array, full armor, or you've gotten to the place where you can show up and be safe without it. Today is the day that we have to be able to maximize. And if that armor is feeling heavy, and if you can kind of relate to that feeling, or if last week in the transition, you realized that armor had become a hindrance rather than help, and you set it down. In both of those scenarios, there is a place for you to be visible and valuable. There is a way. You see, in order to be visible and valuable, and yeah, I've said many times, in order to be seen, you got to be seen. And to be seen, you got to be where you can be seen. To be visible and valuable, you've got to be visible. In order to be able to be visible, you need to be clear who you really are. Not trying to be visible as somebody else or the somebody you wish you were, but just the you that you know you are. And in order to know that, you've got to be clear. Clarity is powerful. Clearly knowing who you are. To answer your question about human design, yes, I have been through it. I'm a manifesting generator, Shelley. To be clear and know who you are allows you that ability to then be visible as who you are. And in order to truly find that true clarity, you need a safe space. And that's what I created Visibility Amplifier for. If you go to visibilityamplifier.com, you're welcome to join our community. We'd love to have you there, whether you're here like Shelley is live or you're listening to it on the replay. It is a place for you to be safe. If you aren't, for any reason, physically, especially emotionally, in a place that you're safe enough to get that clarity, feel free to DM me the word safe. Let's talk about how we can move you from the danger you're in to safety. How we can help you with that noise in your head, to not just quiet it, but to replace it with a new voice that knows and sees you. And Projector Patricia is on. Yeah, absolutely. We're just a bunch of human design people, ain't we? We all are. We are all made specially and amazingly for a purpose. And I'm here to help you today. If this resonated with you, if you really are like, hey, yeah, I do need to look at what armor am I wearing? Why has it felt so heavy? Am I ready to get rid of it? Or I already did lay it down last week, and now I need to know, what can I do now? I'm used to showing up in the world with all my armor on and being all guarded. Come join me in Visibility Amplifier community. Again, visibilityamplifier.com. I'll take you right there. We'd love to have you in the group. You're powerful. You're amazing. I appreciate you. I hope that you are in a place where you can look back and see the armor was heavy and you were willing to let it go and continue to grow. And if you're not, I'm here to help you. Anything I can do for you today, I'm here. Thanks for showing up today. I hope that in everything you're happy, safe, warm, and loved, and that you have a great, great week.